Welcome to the Above and Beyond Recovery Podcast, where we explore recovery and its relationship to faith, family, work, community, and health.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brian Cuck, and I'm the host today of Above and Beyond Recovery, our podcast. So thank you for joining us. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the community's response in recovery. I know a lot of, addiction and recovery and those battling it, a substance abuse disorder deal with the individual and maybe families, but we're going to talk today about the community's response, church, businesses, just community in general. And we're thrilled because our guest today, and we were kind of goofing a little bit with Spanish and English before the episode began, but Pastor Luis Miro is with us today, has become a good friend over the last year or so, and we're excited. He is on staff at Connection Church in Pottstown. So if you're looking for a good church, man, check him out. Great, great church. And I will say this, he is the outreach and care pastor, doing a marvelous job. And so, Pastor Luis, welcome today to the show, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. It's going to be fun.
All right. Well, man, it is great having you, Pastor Luis, and we're excited to talk about, this subject, in Above and Beyond Recovery. We want to take a little deeper dive. And as I said kind of in the intro, like we often think, obviously, of addiction and those kinds of things as it relates to the individual and maybe family or a friend or coworker. But man, today we're talking about community. And I really feel like one of the big issues with that is this isolation thing, number one. But the importance of the community response and what can we do? And I know you're a pastor, but I think as we get started here, I'd like our listeners just to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your story. You're a graduate of Pennsylvania, or of Teen Challenge, of Adult and Teen Challenge, not Pennsylvania. But so tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so in thinking before coming here, I was doing the numbers and I had to take the calculator out. Brian, because I was in denial when I was thinking, I'm a graduate 33 years ago. I'm thinking, wait a minute, 33. That can't be. And then I began to do, I'm 51 minus this, and it was 33 years ago that I walked into, back then it was just Teen Challenge before it became Adult Teen Challenge.
Yeah, right.
And when I walked in, Teen Challenge, broken, using drugs at an early age. By 14, I was on the streets.
Wow.
And my father died of an overdose before I was even a year old. My uncle died. I mean, it was just part of my life.
It was in your family, yeah.
Correct. So I just thought that was my life. That was my goal in life.
Yeah.
As warped as that may sound. And when I went into Teen Challenge, the highest grade that I had completed was 6th.
Okay.
So I had to get tutored. There was my counselor back then. He just made it possible for me to get tutored.
Wow.
Because I just didn't know how to talk. I couldn't put a sentence together.
How about that?
Didn't know what a noun, pronoun was, and the whole bit.
Yeah.
Got my GED. It took me 4 tries.
Wow. Okay.
But I was determined, and so got my GED and stayed on staff. Got certified to teach the group studies from Dave Batty.
That's
an old school name.
The GSNL classes.
Yes.
A lot of our programs, we're teaching them here today.
Still.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
In our faith-based program.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
And so then went on to Bible college, studied Bible theology, and then went on to Fordham University in New York City for psychology. And been in ministry.
Yeah, and that was kind of going to be my next question. So you've been in ministry, and thanks for sharing part of your story, because our listeners, they're on that road to recovery. They may have a loved one or friend, or they themselves, and so thanks for sharing that. And I think sometimes when you hear that, you take a sigh of relief. I think it's like, I'm not the only one.
No.
Or our family's not the only one, especially sharing with your family. But currently, you're on staff at Connection Church, doing a great job as the outreach and care pastor. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, What's involved with that? I know that's like asking a pastor, like, what do you do? Well, when I grew up, a pastor,
What don't you do?
He talks for 30 minutes and that's about it. That's a pretty good gig. But, there's a lot more to pastoring than just speaking on Sunday morning, right? So
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your role there at Connection Church.
So the goal of my role as far as the outreach component is to get the church outside. And it's a cliche, right? Outside the four walls.
Yeah.
And at Connection Church, it's a giving church. They love giving to missions and they love giving to events. But I wanted to transform that paradigm shift of there's more than just writing a check.
That's good.
Right. And so in a year's time that I've been on staff there, I've only been there a year, we've been able to go out and connect with several agencies, be it homeless, be it individual or family shelters. We've been able to actually go in to a homeless encampment site and build relationships in there and clean it up, help them clean up the site. That's
let me just call time out there and let me talk a little bit more about that, because one of the recent weeks that you were doing that, we had teams from Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge join you. So talk to, just so our listeners know, because this is a huge community response. And I don't know, I mean, there's churches who do it and there's some maybe that don't. Maybe we even have pastors listening today that would just like to hear some ideas. So what is that like when you do that at the camp, in the encampment? Is that what it's called?
It's a homeless encampment.
Okay, so talk
right,
to us.
It's another word for calling it tent city.
Okay, all
right, where a group of homeless, those that have found themselves in this state,
and a lot of cities have that.
Many cities now. Some have them out in the open,
right,
and some have them inside the woods, inside a wooded area.
Right.
And so we have been blessed. We've connected with a ministry in Pottstown that go in there every Tuesday with a medical team that volunteer to bring medical support to those that are in the site, and as a church build relationships. So the only way that we were able to actually go in there and do an actual event, a cleanup event, it took several visits before in building relationships.
Yeah, which is all based on that.
Right.
When you say cleanup, now tell me. So you build a relationship, you start to have conversation,
Correct.
Right? You're talking with them. You're concerned with them. Because I think sometimes I've seen a ministry where the ministry we do, it's more about us doing it and getting the check mark. But you're going in, you're building relationship, you're talking with them. What's the cleanup? Explain that.
So we're blessed where we have trash day, pickup day, right?
I got you.
We put out the trash.
Yep.
Someone comes by, picks it up.
Yep.
Well, when you're in a homeless encampment, there is no trash pickup day. And so the trash builds up. And what we found in this particular, so there's several encampment sites in Pottstown.
I got you.
This particular one, they're made up of working class people.
Wow.
Right, that have found themselves for whatever reason one paycheck. Right, we're all most of Americans are one paycheck away from becoming homeless.
Right.
And so we have CVS workers, we have factory workers, right? We have truck drivers.
This is where they live. There's so many stereotypes, isn't there? Like so many biases that we hear about. Like, so let me ask this: like, how does addiction play into that, or what's been your experience with that?
Well, interesting. In this particular specific encampment site, the front half, so there are about 35 adults that live there, and the front half is sober section. And they make it clear. It's a community, it's a well-run. Now, and
isn't that something?
There's a mayor, right? We gave her that name. She's the mayor of the site. But something? If you want to do drugs, if you want to, drink, you could go in the back. The front end, this is the sober side, right? Wow. And a lot of times, because of addiction, many have found themselves, as I did, as a teenager, homeless. Okay. Right? And so in New York, I had the blessing of having a subway system that runs all night. So I remember sleeping on the F train.
No kidding. For
shelter. Well, in a city like Pottstown or many other cities, there are no places to go to. So you find a site, you camp, and you do your best to get by. And a lot of times with addiction, that just goes hand in hand.
It's like survival. You're doing what you... Yeah.
Correct.
And so is it mainly churches, or are there businesses that help in this outreach and trying to bring, wholeness to that community? Or
So we are in Pottstown, and this may sound like a feather in our cap.
No,
and I want to make sure that those that are viewing,
No,
it's
that's
not
right.
a feather in our cap.
No.
We just been blessed because I'm open about my recovery.
Yeah, well, that's
And
which
so-
many people are not,
Yeah, so
and so it's good.
exactly. And I think in the communities in dealing with agencies, they need to know that I'm not just Reverend Luis Miro representing Connection Church.
Right.
I'm Reverend Luis Miro representing Connection Church, but let me tell you, I've been there, done that. I haven't read a book, I haven't seen a movie,
Right.
I've experienced it.
Right. You've lived that.
I've lived it, and so I represent a faith community that wants to come in. Right. We're not planning. We're not the end all. We just want to help and support. So that's
Well, let me ask that because this isn't in the plan, but I just felt led as you were saying that.
Let's go with it.
So let's say a leader, a pastor, someone's listening to this episode. They're involved in something. They say, "Hey, what could our organization, what could our church do?" But we'd like to be a part of something as far as helping those in addiction. But that's not my life. It's not my MO. That's not. I don't understand that language, that world. What would you say to someone listening like that would like, maybe it's not even in a homeless encampment, but it's getting involved in helping those in addiction? What would you say?
so. I think that's the biggest, if I may say, lie that we believe that because I haven't been there, done that,
Okay.
I can't impact a life. Right?
That's really good.
Right. That's not the case at all. Because, I mean, we look at the Jesus.
Yeah.
Right, when he dealt with, the naysayers,
That's
as
right.
it were, he wasn't one of them.
That's right.
What did he do? He went in and cared and loved.
Yeah, that's
and I
right.
think once we break down, once we stop thinking that we have to be someone, because here's the deal. If you come to me, so I'm on the street,
Yeah.
and you come to me with all this lovey-dovey and trying to fit in and trying to be someone you're not,
You're going to read that in a heartbeat.
for sure.
Yeah.
And so, if I may candidly, ebonically say, a lot of churches, pastors, no need to fake the funk.
Right.
Be real.
Right.
Because that's what attracts those that are outside of the four walls, is you being real.
Yeah.
And just going and caring and listening,
Right. Right.
just going. And there may be someone in the congregation, right, that has recovery, but there hasn't been a need,
Right.
or the pastor hasn't expressed the desire.
Right.
Hey, this is what we want to do as a church. Does anyone have experience?
Yeah.
If so, I want to meet with you.
Yeah, that's good. And what I often say is that as I'm out speaking and ministering in churches and representing Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge, telling my story of how addiction has affected my life, because what we say here, and I know you would understand this, that addiction doesn't discriminate. It affects so many. Yet when I'm really surprised, and if pastors are listening, when I hear this from time to time, they'll almost say to me in a way like, well, we don't really battle that here. We don't see that in our church or in our community. And I have to call a timeout and say, listen, then you're not looking in the right spot, because that need is so prevalent, right? So what do you say to that when you hear that?
So I got it. Feel free to stop me because I'm about to get on a soapbox.
Right.
Warning.
Well,
So
our
let me-
producer will stop us. So
For
you
sure.
go right ahead.
So the reason why people in the congregation have not come forward is because a
safe space.
safe space where grace can be experienced
Wow.
hasn't been made available.
Wow.
And so
the issue's there, but they just don't feel the opportunity to be vulnerable and share it.
absolutely. In the short time that I've been on staff at Connection Church, because I'm open about my recovery,
Yeah.
I've had several,
Oh, man.
and this is not an exaggeration,
No, I believe it.
several people, male and female, send me a message and say, Pastor, I've been attending here for 15 years, 14 years, and I've been a secret alcoholic or a secret drug addict. And not that, right, it's just there hasn't been anyone to connect
It's not a
with.
safe prayer request.
Correct, right? There's a stigma.
Yes, a
Right?
stigma. It's a good word.
You can't reach out because you're going to be looked at as less than because
Yeah.
I am a leader or I am a owner of a company or a president of a company, and so
Right.
I don't struggle.
So if
I'm not supposed to
a
struggle.
pastor, church leader, business leader, it's community.
Yeah.
What could they do to create a safe space? What are some ideas that they could do? How do you create that culture? Let's keep it with the church. You're a pastor. I've been a pastor. How would we create a safe space where someone that is battling that, or maybe a spouse or family member, son or daughter, a dad or mom, how do we create a safe space? What are some things we could do possibly?
I think for starters, a pastor or the pastoral staff can start with, listen, I haven't been there or done that, if they haven't experienced. All I know is that God has called us as a church to reach those, and maybe reach those that are here in our congregation.
Right.
And I don't presume to know what you've done or how you are. Right. All I know is I know Jesus' love. And so we're going to meet. Yeah. And if you are in recovery, or if you are a family member with someone who is struggling in recovery, Thursday night, we're going to meet for coffee. We're going to meet for pizza, or create a space. Begin with creating I don't know, but let's get together and let's do life together. Let's do recovery life together.
Yeah, that's really good. And one of the things that I would do as a pastor, like if I was having a conversation with someone and they were being transparent and open, and again, building a relationship. It wasn't just throwing them out there to tell their story, but I feel like what I often say is we're not just a number. Every number has a name.
Yes.
Every name has a story, and every story matters to God.
That's right.
And when someone can share their story in front of the congregation and be vulnerable and open like you've been, what freedom that is. Then can you imagine the people that sit in church and go like, oh man, I need that.
Yes.
So I think if a pastor, if you're listening today and you could just say, look, we're going to create a safe spot. We're not trying to put someone on the spot, but we're just trying to let you've heard so-and-so story today. Man, if we can be a help to you, this is a safe place where you can find healing in Jesus. I think that's a great thought. As we kind of get toward the end here, you say whatever you want to say about community response, to the church, to leaders, local communities. Like, how can we improve in that? How can we start to do a better job with those things?
I think back to doing away with the stigma of,
that's good.
I don't know because I haven't lived it.
Right.
Truth. So let's deal with that reality.
Yep.
You don't know. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But here's what you do know.
And you don't have to act like you do know it.
And don't act like you don't. Like I said earlier, don't fake the funk.
Yep.
Because they'll read right through
I like that. Don't fake the funk.
Don't fake the
funk. That
funk.
almost sounds like a written word type thing that you mentioned in your wholeness habit.
Oh boy.
But we'll try to wrap with that. That's good.
Now I got to think about what rhymes with funk. Anyway. Go to the local city hall or library and start looking, or go to Google. Not everything is right. Go to Google. I'm saying my age here, right?
Yeah, right.
Go to Google and type out local, recovery communities. Local, what's out there?
Yeah.
And I think every community, for the most part, has some sort of support program, be it NAAA, Celebrate Recovery, Adult Teen Challenge. There's something out there.
Right.
Start with, hey, I'm calling, I'm from so-and-so church.
Yeah, educate yourself a little
and
bit more. Yeah.
I would like to learn.
Yeah.
Right? And you'd be surprised, the level of respect, I think on a whole, of the faith community will begin to rise in communities if they come to the acknowledgement and say, I don't know, I need help. Help me to help you.
We often ask our listeners, hey, if there's a question or comment, we'd love to hear it. Well, we got a question. So I want to share it with you. And when we talk about communities, and that's kind of our episode today, communities in recovery, I think sometimes what the listener was saying was we think it's like the police, or it's the schools, or if the church did a better job, or if one segment of our society did a better job, this would fix everything. But when we think about wholeness in community and we think about everyone doing their job, how would you respond to a question like that?
We were created to do life as a community, right?
That's right.
In the beginning, God said, let us create man in our, right? So those are community, us, our, right? And
and he told Adam, it's not good that you're alone.
Correct, right? We could see it in the beginning, right? And so I think
that's good.
For me, community recovery, the journey of recovery cannot be done alone, because alone you end up, this just a bad road.
That's right.
Your own thoughts
Yeah.
lead to your own actions, and those actions are a lot of times not good.
Yeah.
And so it takes an entire community, educational, just faith, to be to be a part of someone's recovery journey. And the reason why is accountability,
Right.
education. We learn from one another.
Right. If you lack understanding, it's just hard to even take the first step.
Correct. Support, right? Jokingly, I say this, but it's the truth. Batman had Robin.
Hello.
Superman needed Lois Lane.
Wow. Right.
Right? And so it's
that's
important for communities to, community agencies, community faith-based organizations, and churches alike, that it's not about building more people
Right.
in my agency or in my group or in my church. It's about getting the holistic view of our community, because if our community is better, every agency as a community, be it secular or faith, grows and becomes better.
We're better together.
Correct.
We're stronger together. We learn together, because we may have our special segment that we're an expert in, or at least we know a lot more than the rest of them. But together, now we can bring wholeness to that understanding. And I will say to our viewers, you'll hear at the end, if you want to, comment or have a question for us. But I will say that Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge wants to be a part of that wholeness. And so, man, check out our website, PAATC.org. If you need personal help, I know we have ministry teams that go out to churches and schools and community events, and we want to be a part of that. We know we're not the whole answer. We certainly want to give help to those that we can. Churches aren't the whole answer, so we'll work with police and you name it in a community. But if we can be a help to you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'd love that. Well, hey, before we close today, if you are a regular listener, you know that each episode we do what's called a wholeness habit. And the mission of PAATC, who produces this great podcast, our mission is bringing wholeness to the hopeless. And so what we do in each of our episodes is we just talk about a wholeness habit. And it doesn't have to be this life-changing thing, or I'm going to climb Mount Everest, but maybe I'm drinking more water today, or maybe I'm trying to do this. Yeah. So we always do that with our guests of what's the wholeness habit that you've been working into your life. So Pastor, tell us, what's your wholeness habit for today?
Well, I like to climb Mount Everest.
Oh wow.
No, just joking. Just because you said that. For me, I started a habit about 5 years ago, and that is I write spoken word. Spoken word is poetry to a cadence, to a rhythmic cadence. And I just love to write. I'm constantly in writing mode, whether one line, 2 lines, or a 5-minute set, if you will. Wow. So that's my wholeness habit.
That's really cool. I love hearing that. Back in the day, I was a big journaler before cell phones and all that. When you have an old man hosting the show, that's the stuff you hear. I would chisel on a piece of stone, it seems like, but that's a really cool thought.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm going to go with that. I had a different habit that I was thinking about in relationship to the show today, but I'll just say that, I am the same way. Now, I don't do the written spoken word, but I've always been a big journaler. In my early Christian faith, the guy that was mentoring me and discipling me talked about that. I just had my Bible in my journal, and I would just jot some things down. Maybe it was a prayer, maybe it was a verse that I was trying to memorize, and I'm a visual learner, and so I would write that verse out 2 or 3 times to kind of lock it in my mind. So that's a great thing. I was talking to someone recently. We had someone here up at the program that was doing kind of a writing workshop and getting some of our students to just write their things out, which there's healing in that.
Absolutely. Very therapeutic.
Very therapeutic is right. I remember during my accident, someone gave me a coloring book and crayons and said, "This is coloring therapy." And I was like, okay, well, I never heard of that. But just sitting there coloring, and I tried to stay in the lines. That's kind of the way I'm wired. But so writing is, what a great wholeness habit. So thank you for sharing. That's good. I think the way we'll close up, before we do the outro, you just give us one of your wholeness habits. What do you call it? Your written word.
Spoken word.
Spoken word.
Right. So let's see.
Let's hear it. You need a drum roll? Or?
No.
Okay,
Let's
we're
see.
good.
So the letter I is in the middle of pride and sin, and pride would have us say, "I won't be like her," or "I won't end up like him."
Wow. There you go.
Right.
Give that to us one more time. That's good.
So the letter I
Yep.
is in the middle of pride and sin.
Yeah.
And pride will have us say to ourselves, "I won't be like her," or "I won't end up like him."
There you go. Well, hey, everybody, that about does it for today. So thank you so much for joining us in this great episode. Pastor Luis, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And don't forget, as you listen to this podcast, man, we'd love to hear from you. So if you have a comment, a question, just some input, if you want information from us, we're certainly excited to hear from you. AboveBeyond at PAATC.org. AboveBeyond at PAATC.org. And we'd love to hear from you. And so reach out to us if you can. Thank you so much. Yeah. I might do a brief spoken word on Banyo. You never know.
You just did.
Well, there you go.
You
Bam.
just wrote.
Bam.
Banyo, you never know.
Banyo, you
when
never
you gotta
know.
go.
Okay, that's how we're closing the show. That's how we're closing the episode.
Thank you for joining us. The Above and Beyond Recovery Podcast is a production of Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge. If you or a loved one needs help with addiction, call us now at 844-888-8085 or find us online at PAATC.org. That information is also in our show notes. Join us next time as we continue the conversation.